Hi, I'm Randy Kobat, Senior Vice President at Cox Automotive, and I'm honored to be here today with Dale Pollak, founder of vAuto and Executive Vice President at Cox Automotive. So Dale, I understand you and the vAuto team in Austin have been working on something new.
And I have to tell you that I've not had this level of excitement since we introduced the original vAuto Provision Used Vehicle Management System. What we're about to do is going to be a paradigm shift, and I believe it's a true Moneyball moment for our industry. I've come to understand that managing inventory, used vehicle inventory by age, is just simply wrong. It's just wrong. And I think it's fair to say that implicit in every decision that a manager makes regarding a used vehicle, at some level, is the concept of its age. Time is just embedded at one level or another in just about every decision we make regarding a used car. And time, the clock time or the calendar time, is simply outdated. To me, it begins to resemble the sundial. Because if you really stop and think about it, every dealer knows that after a certain amount of time in stock, a car needs to go. And there's many reasons why it needs to go, but the number one reason that it needs to go away is that what they paid for it didn't change, but the market price at which it will transact has changed. It's come down, limiting the amount of profit contribution that any given vehicle is able to make. And the older the vehicle, typically the less profit contribution it's able to make. Well, what I've come to understand through a lot of data crunching and modeling is that vehicles run out of profit contribution potential at different rates. And some vehicles actually start out in inventory on day one without the ability to make much, if any, profit potential at all. And operating on the calendar time, the clock time, we would fail to recognize that vehicle as one in which we should take action for another 59 days. And conversely, there are some vehicles that we're very anxious to get out of very quickly for the sake of turning our inventory, which in reality, we come to understand that time is on our side. So if we really stop and think about it, Randy, what we're ultimately trying to do is find the right balance between fast turn and high gross. And essentially what we've been using to do that is a very crude instrument, being the calendar. And the calendar, the age of the vehicle was never the problem. It was just simply a technology, an old technology that informed us of a problem, and it did it as a blunt instrument would do it. In other words, giving us incorrect signals on some and failing to give us any signal on others. So what we've done is we've created a 12-point scale where we give every vehicle an investment score on this 12-point scale. So for example, one car could have an investment score of 4.7, another one might be a 10.3. The higher, the better. And then what we've done, Randy, is we've taken and put the investment scores of a dealer's inventory for each vehicle into 4 quadrants based on standard deviations upon their distribution of their pricing. A little bit complicated, but here's where it gets really interesting. We now can take every dealer's inventory, as I said, put a score on every vehicle, and break it down into 4 buckets. We're calling it the platinum, the gold, the silver, and the bronze. So the platinum vehicles are the ones that are in the highest quadrant or standard deviation tier, representing the best investment potential. And conversely, the bronze vehicles are the ones that represent the worst investment potential, regardless of their days in inventory. And here's where we knew we were really onto something big. Running the investment score and what we're calling the precious metal buckets over millions and millions of records. The revelation that really took us all by surprise is that the vehicles in inventory, the bronze vehicles, that the dealers should actually be most aggressive about getting out of, or for that matter, not even getting into, the bronze vehicles, are the ones that are least aggressively priced. And guess what category of vehicles are the most aggressively priced?
The platinum.
You got it.
Wow.
So the platinum vehicles, the vehicles that dealers own for the right amount of money, that have the highest demand and least supply in their market, over millions and millions of vehicles, dealers are pricing those vehicles most aggressive 80+% of the time. So of course dealers are saying we can't make any money in this highly margin compressed environment. No kidding. Because using the old crude technology of the calendar, you're actually pricing the vehicles, 80+% of them, that the ones you can actually afford to take some time because you own them right and the market is hot for them, you're actually pricing those most aggressively. And the vehicles that you should be getting out of right now, you're pricing least aggressively. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to go back to the industry and say to these dealers that a better lens for you to make acquisition decisions and pricing decisions is no longer the days in inventory, but rather the investment value of the vehicle measured by its score and bucketed by the precious metal designations.
Well, that really does sound like a game changer.
Well, it's a game changer in terms of the technology, but it's also a game changer in terms of the philosophy. And this is, again, part of the reason why I'm very excited, because over the course of the last 10 years, as you know, we have created a lot of new features and functionality in the vAuto provision system. But essentially they've been new tools, none of which really have required rethinking philosophically how we manage used vehicle inventory. And this is going to require a philosophical change in our thinking and our strategy. So just to give you a little example of how that shakes out. If a dealer owned a vehicle in stock in the first 10 days and it represented a very, very poor investment quality, in other words, it would have a low investment score and it might be a bronze car in the early days of inventory, would any dealer manager be bold enough to put a spiff on a 10-day-old car to blow it out for zero profit? No.
Right.
Because the old playbook of used car management would say you don't do that to a fresh car. But in reality, although this is a fresh car, given the fact that it's got a poor investment grade, it is a car you should absolutely get out of as quickly as possible. And then equally as challenging, at least to the vAuto philosophy, we might take a car that's 40, 50 days old that might be a platinum car. And according to traditional vAuto philosophy, and it's sort of interesting to say traditional vAuto philosophy, you would say that that car is overdue, it should have been gone. And in reality, you still have some time left on not the calendar clock, but the profit clock on that car. So we have to start to actually think that maybe, depending on the investment quality of your inventory portfolio, maybe you should actually, ready for this? Ready? Slow your turn. And if your investment quality on your inventory is particularly low, then of course you should speed your turn. So once again, all we've ever really been trying to do using this crude technology called the calendar is to find that proper balance between fast turn and high gross. And now we have an instrument, we have a technology that will allow us to do it easily, but we're gonna have to reprogram ourselves, do a mental software update to allow ourselves to think differently and change some of the long accepted, unquestioned rules of quote unquote used car best practices. So it's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be a great fun opportunity for all of us at vAuto, and we're going to teach the industry, I think, to take their used inventory management performance to a new level using new philosophy and new tools.
It really sounds like an evolution of the velocity method of management.
Evolution, perhaps. Revolution, maybe.
So Dale, this investment metric sounds really exciting. How does it get incorporated in with the other metrics that are available inside vAuto?
Right, good question. So the new investment score is going to give you a much better ability to make decisions, not only about pricing your vehicles once you own it, but purchasing the vehicles. Imagine in your vAuto appraisal tool, you have all the existing functionality, but you now have three prominently displayed metrics side by side. And picture it in terms of three circles. The circle in the middle being the largest one, which will show you your investment score for any vehicle that you're proposing to purchase at any given proposed appraisal amount. To the left of that, you'll have the vehicle's market grade, which you're familiar with on the A, B, C, D, F scale. And then to the right of it, you'll have your strategy action. So just to review, as you know, the strategy action shows you how many of those vehicles, that type of vehicle you're considering purchasing, you need in stock. You might be +4, you might be -9. It will show you at that moment next to the investment score whether you need some or whether you have too many. And then on the other side of that, as I said, the investment grade. So think about in one line what you've got. You have the interest of that particular vehicle in terms of the market on the ABCDF scale. You have your inventory need or lack of need for that vehicle, and you have the investment score. How good of an investment will that vehicle be at the proposed purchase price? So let me give you an example of how that might lay out. If you had a need in your inventory, let's say that you were 4 short, for example, of compact SUVs. Your inventory, current inventory, is 4 short of where you want to be at 30-day supply. And you're proposing or you're thinking about purchasing one of these subcompact SUVs, and you found one, and the investment grade on that vehicle is a B+. So the market's hot for it, and your inventory calls for it. The only problem is the amount of money you'd have to pay for that makes it a silver investment right out of the gate. Well, I would suggest to you that you now have the justification to pay a little bit more money than you'd like to, bringing it in on day one at a silver investment level, just 1 tier up from bronze. Why? Because the market's hot for it and your inventory needs it. You're obviously missing sales, missing opportunities by not having that vehicle. But let's change the scenario. Let's say that you're appraising a vehicle at the dealership, and given the amount that you had to pay to acquire the trade, it made it a silver investment on day one. Well, suppose the market grade on that vehicle was a C-, and your inventory strategy action said that you had 6 too many of them. Would you necessarily want to trade for that vehicle at a silver, knowing on day one you're going to be heavy in the car, the market doesn't care for it, and you already have too many of them? That might be an opportunity that you'd pass. So you see, it really presents context for making the critical investment decisions at time of appraisal, given what you're about to pay or have to pay for the vehicle relative to how the market likes it, relative to how your inventory needs it or doesn't need it. We're going to start making better investment decisions in more of a contextual fashion, which will allow you and your people in the dealership to make much better decisions. And similarly, when we go to price a car,
much more granular decision makings in the areas where Viato really is the core of what we do, pricing and appraising.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. And Randy, when we've been piloting this with dealers and real frontline managers, when they see this information, the investment score, the market grade, and the strategy action all together in context, they're just astounded. They're saying, wow, I would totally think about making that decision differently. And that's what's so exciting. And differently in this case definitely means better.
I see what you mean by a Moneyball moment for Viato in our industry.
Truly, it's a new way of thinking, new way of doing, and couldn't be more excited about it.
So Dale, what are we going to call this new innovation, and when is it going to be available?
We're going to call it ProfitTime. And let me explain the thinking behind that name. Up until this point, we've been managing used vehicle inventory based on clock time or calendar time. And for all the reasons I've already stated, that's crude, it's old technology. So what we're doing now is we're going to begin to make decisions about vehicles, whether they be acquisition or pricing decisions, based on profit time. We're replacing the calendar or the clock with profit, hence the name ProfitTime. ProfitTime is going to be introduced as an upgrade version to the Viato provision system. And we're going to formally introduce it in 2019 in January at the NADA convention in San Francisco.
Thank you, Dale. And thank you all for joining us today to learn about Viato's latest innovation, Provision ProfitTime. We'll be sharing a lot more information as we get closer to NADA, so please stay tuned.